Hello, this is Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker, and I want to welcome you, whether you are a Women's Poker Association member or not. I want you to pass the word around. And our special guest, let me share her screen just a moment before she speaks. I love this picture that Lupe put together. A special guest is Terry King. Look at that smiling face, and you're going to get, we dressed for each other tonight without even realizing that. So I'm excited because we are together with the Women's Poker Association uniting women poker players worldwide, and I'm excited. So, gosh, Terry, I want to know all about you, and I've got some background, but I would rather you tell us about how you got started in poker and what your love was about the poker game.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm never going to tell all, but I'll share some. All right, we'll start at the beginning. I graduated from high school, and my boyfriend's aunt lived in Las Vegas. So I got the bright idea, instead of going to college, I'd take off and go stay with her. So I had a one-way ticket at the age of 18, and I stayed for 40 years. She coincidentally played poker, not very well, mind you, and she also was a barrel racer. She rode horses, and we'd been out riding, and she said, let's go to the Golden Nugget. So when we bounced to the Golden Nugget, I'm 18 years old with my hair in braided pigtails, and we go into the Golden Nugget to play 1 to 5, 5-card draw. Well, I sat behind her because I had never played anything in my life. And I sat behind her about 10 times before I got up the nerve to play myself. And there was a horrible woman in the game, Natalie King, coincidentally, and I couldn't stand her because she check raised me and I almost cried. And somehow I sat next to her at the coffee shop one day, and a month later I was godmother to both her daughters, and I'm now a great-grandmother, and we've been best friends since 1972.
Oh, that is exciting. Now, when Lupe sent me some information about your kind of your bio, she said that your first game was 5-card draw at Golden Nugget, 25% 25 cent ante, and 1 to 5.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's correct.
So you quit your legal secretary job to play 1-3 stud at the Dunes every day?
Well, Natalie and her husband started working with me and teaching me how to play better. And eventually the 5-card draw game died out at the Nugget, and the Mint, the Fremont had a game also. So there was a 6-card stud game at the Dunes. So we started playing there, and I just kept winning, and I quit my job. And then the 6-card stud game fizzled out, and I had to play 7-card stud, and it was like a million extra cards, that one card. But yeah, I played for a living for 2 years before I finally turned old enough to legally be in the casinos.
So you turned 21 and you went to work at Silver City?
Yes.
Now, Silver City, where was that?
Right across from the Stardust. It's now a roster right next to the Pepper Mill.
Okay. So the first game you dealt was 3,000, 6,000?
Yes, I was a break-in dealer. I had never dealt before, and my boss decided I was the perfect candidate to sit down and deal to Major Riddle, who owned the Silver City, and a man called Shoeshine Nick, who was kind of the local gangster type. He had a lot of guys in his pocket, let's say. So I dealt heads up 3,000 and 6,000 Raz to those two.
Wow. So, okay, talking about Raz, what kind of counsel would you give anyone for learning Raz? And I kind of like to know. I mean, I like to learn the games, and I've played a bit on the online and a little bit in person, but not much.
Well, Raz, it's funny about Raz. They don't play it too much anywhere, just a straight Raz game, because the players are so mean. And Chip explained it to me one day. He said, the reason is, you know, in 7-card stud, a deuce could conceivably help your hand, but there's no disguise in that big fat king in Raz. You know, you can't do anything with it. It's just there, and it's a frustrating game. You can start with, you know, ace 2 3 4 and catch king king queen, and the players get very frustrated, and you know, just try to draw smoothly, as they say.
And what do you mean by smoothly?
Well, if somebody raises with a 7 up and you've got a 8 9 10, you probably don't want to call. You want baby cards.
So now Raz, explain the rules of Raz.
Raz is just the worst card, the worst hand wins, the lowest hand. The lowest 5-card hand wins. It could be a pair. It could be a king high. It just, you know, it's not a split game, just the lowest hand wins.
So how does a straight play in, like a wheel, how does that play in the game?
A wheel is the best hand.
That is the best hand.
Yes, a straight does not count against you in Raz. In deuce to 7, it does. Aces count as high, and straights and flushes count against you. Therefore, the best hand is a 2 3 4 5 7, in deuce to 7, low ball.
Well, I have to say that Lupe was putting together some online training for this type of games, and you can find the videos on our channel on YouTube, a YouTube channel, WPA, Women's Poker Association. So be sure to go there if you're interested in learning more about it. And it was fun because I was able to be a co-host with Lupe, and I learned a lot because it's been a while since I played any of those games. So I'm excited. Oh, by the way, let's see. A gun was pulled at the table and you had a gun to your head mid-pot while dealing?
Yeah, it was kind of the Wild West days back then. Coincidence. Well, one guy pulled a gun. A guy reached for the pot, and Jimmy Casella pulled a gun out because he had caught the guy holding out, meaning he, you know, was cheating. And Jimmy just pulled his gun and set it on the table, and the guy looked at him and said, "You got me, no problem." And then the card room manager at Silver City came in one day, drunk, and walked up and put a gun to my head. He's like, "It's not loaded." I said, "Yeah, I read about those unloaded guns." I said, "Drop the gun or I'm dropping the deck." So he did, but it was crazy times back then.
My goodness. So tell us about your WSOP bracelet win in '78.
I was dealing at Silver City, and I also Eric Drake had asked a friend of mine and myself, Jackie Simon, if we would deal the main event. He told me at the time we would be the first 2 women to deal the main event. I've heard there was another woman that did. I didn't deal the final table, but we did deal the main event. And so I was working at Silver City and the Horseshoe, and I played in the ladies tournament, and I wound up winning it. So it was on Mother's Day. So I was late calling my mom, but she didn't mind being awakened at 4 in the morning.
Oh, that is so cool. How many women were in the tournament? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh, I forget. 100. I want to say 102. I forget.
That's a good number then. That's absolutely a good number then. So, and I gotta ask, you dated Chip Reese for a while?
I did. He had actually asked me to play in the mixed doubles with him almost a year ahead of time. there weren't that many women that played, and Doyle had already locked Starla Thompson back then, and she was actually the best player. Well, Sissy Russo was also, but Starla's one I coincidentally beat heads up for the ladies event. But anyway, so Chip and I started dating, and I quit my job at Silver City, and we were together for 5 years.
Oh, that
And
is so cool.
it was great times, I got to tell you. As they say, money's not everything, but boy, it sure was fun.
It sure was. You know, what are some of the things you've had to cope with, and how does poker help you do that? Has poker ever helped you in other parts of your life?
Oh, goodness. Well, I would, yeah, I would say so. Like, it came into play when I bought a house. I bluffed him. I walked away from the deal, and I had to convince my realtor that I was really walking away, but I had no intention of walking away. But so yeah, it's a friend of mine, actually, a group of poker players left Vegas in the 70s, maybe early 80s, late 70s, I think, and went back east and worked the stock market and became very, very wealthy from it and started their own financial group. And they still have poker as part of their training because it's very similar to the stock market. You got to make split decisions. You got to, you got to get in there and gamble.
So they used poker as part of their training for the stock market.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you can put poker into a lot of different things. As I said, like even just buying my house. I mean, I just had to bluff my way. And he called the other agent. He said, she's walking. And he was convincing because he believed it. I led him to think it was true too. And they called back and they said, oh, no, we weren't done. Tell her we'll take that. I said, okay.
So with the poker, what happened is that it was able to help you with your courage, to be courageous and take a stand.
Yeah, that too. But I probably inherited some of that from my mother. She was I come from a long line of independent women. My great grandmother divorced my great grandfather in the 1910s, which was unheard of back then. He'd say, I'll be back in an hour, and she wouldn't see him for 6 months. So she divorced him. And then she met my step great grandfather, who was a poker player, coincidentally. He won a section of land. He won a big house. He used to play in downtown Tulsa in the back of a bar, which we just found out a few years ago was called the Horseshoe Club.
Really?
Yes, and he played with some woman. There was always a woman in the game, and I still have some of the jewelry that he beat her out of. He passed it on to my mom, and I've got some of it.
Oh, that is so cool.
For not having any background in poker, and he wasn't related by blood, but I just thought that was very interesting because the horseshoe is very special to me after all the years of playing there and friends with the owners and whatnot.
Well, I come from a long line of strong women as well, and I think it's good to talk with other women in the association at the table and find out, what they like about poker. I mean, my grandmother, she wouldn't divorce my grandfather even when he left and started living with another woman.
Oh no.
Yeah, and when he had a stroke when they were in the bed, she called and she said, Lillian, Jim said you better come and get him.
Oh my gosh, that's too kind. See, my grandmother was just the opposite. My grandmother, who was born in 1906, married 6 times to 5 different men.
Wow.
Okay, and my mother was married 3 times. So I was married once in 74, for 2 years. And I said, okay, I'm done. There's got to be a better way. I would have married Chip, but after that, I'm done.
Well, I'm on my third and final husband, by the way, and I guess it's the third is the charm.
Well, sounds like it is. It sounds like it works. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 6'5" and he's 5'3", and he's one of the few people I look up to.
That's awesome. I have a naughty joke about that, but I don't think I should tell.
Oh, please do. I've said something just a tiny bit naughty and I got scolded from please do.
No.
Come on. Do it.
My dad used to say, a tall woman and a short man. When they're nose to nose, his toes is in it. And when they're toes to toes, his nose is in it.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that all the time. You know,
There you go. See,
yeah,
you pulled it out of me and you already knew it.
I already knew. Oh, and I want to remind everybody that when something comes up that you want to ask, please put it in the chat area and we can ask, you can chime in, because the more conversation we have, the better. Some poker players find poker can be frustrating at times. Do you agree with that, or do you find it frustrating?
Well, certainly it can be frustrating. I mean, we've all gone through the bad beats and the downs. You have ups and downs, and it's how you deal with the losing streaks that defines you.
So how have you dealt with those losing streaks?
Tighten up, tighten up, tighten up. And, if you need to take a little time off, do that. Just, it eventually, works. You just have to work your way through it. I haven't played in a while. I moved back to Tulsa 7 years ago and was taking care of my mother. And
I'm sorry when she passed.
Oh, well, thank you so much. She was 91. She led a good, full life. And, well, it wasn't a surprise. It's always sad. But so I didn't have any time to play. And 7-card studs, I mean, they still have some games in Vegas, I hear, at the Bellagio and Encore, I think. So I've been trying to get settled in. Haven't really had the time to go play, but I will. Those games might be too high for me. I haven't worked in over 4 years, so and I'm rusty. I haven't played in so long, but I'll start playing something. If I play Hold'em, it'll probably be Limit.
It's a good place to start for sure. I mean, I've been off the felt for a good bit too. I've been taking care of, my mother is 92, and I come from a long gene pool. Her mother lived to be 98. My grandmother was born in 1889, by the way.
Oh my.
Yeah, and she was actually she had a heart condition, and in essence, I've been dealing with one of myself, and mother dealt with one starting back in 2011, and I was starting to feel kind of sad that maybe this was genetic, and then I said, no, stop owning that. When something that bothers us. But I've been away from the felt a good bit and taking care of mother, and my husband is 100% service-connected disabled combat veteran.
Thank him.
I will. He was in Vietnam since he was so tiny. He was what they call a tunnel rat.
Wow.
And he had more exposure to the Agent Orange, and he had lung cancer in 2008. And thankfully, thank God that he is cancer-free, cancer-free, even though he had one of his lungs taken out in 2008. So that's, and he loves poker, by the way. Poker is one of the things that is very healing for him, because it enables him to re-engage with people. It enables him to, sharpen his mental skills, because when he's been dealing with illness, the cancer has been, it's grueling. And
well, sure. And poker's really, it's fun. It's, once in a while it's fun to just go out and play a real small game and just goof around and have a good time. Jackie Wesley just said she played in a tournament, Crazy Pineapple, and at South Point, and it sounds really fun. So I might go with her and play in one of the. I played it years ago, Pineapple and Crazy Pineapple, I think. But just some fun. I think it's a $60 tournament. I'm not sure.
Well, let me tell you what happened to me when I first played Pineapple when it first came out. Gosh, well over 10 years ago. I guess I was in LA at the Bicycle, and the game was so crazy. It was a cash game, and I stayed for a short period of time. It was very expensive, and I finally got up, and I went over to the cashier and I said, "Here's $100 bill. Give me tens." She said, "What's it? Give me tens." I went back to the table, and I walked around and I gave everybody at the table a $10 bill.
And you felt like you made out.
I really did. Yeah, I really did. Did you think women would still be so underrepresented in poker all these years later?
Yes and no. There were so few women that played. Are we blanking out?
No. Are you, hello? Hang on.
Hello?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I had a phone call come in. I'm sorry. There were so few women that played back then. So, we went through, hello? We went through a lot, the show.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm muting people as they come on that they're unaware that they need to mute themselves. And
okay.
I'm muting them as I'm trying to mute them.
Okay. Well, they can't get a word in edgewise with us anyway. So, and the way that women tournaments started at the Horseshoe was because so few women played poker. And some of the big players' wives would sit behind them, but they didn't want to jump in the games with those guys. They were all really good players. So they started a women's tournament. And the purpose of it was for the new women players to get involved. And it's worked tremendously, but then pretty soon it was a lot of great players that were playing in the ladies. I actually think it's sad that we have to have special tournaments, but I know we do, and hopefully there will be a time when we don't, because I think women can play just as well as men. There just aren't as many of us.
I think that there's a lot of skills that women have that can certainly surpass men's skills. I think that our stamina, I think we have true stamina because I think women can be kind to themselves and take care of themselves where men don't oftentimes do that. But I think the skills that women have are astonishing. What skills do you believe women have that might benefit them more at the poker table if they work on them?
Well, you can't work on intuition. I think I believe women do have women's intuition sometimes. And skill, you just have to use things to your advantage. My friend wrote a book about how to beat the boys. Her name is Kat Hulbert. And she classified them in different groups. The chauvinist that, thinks you should be home and in the kitchen and women shouldn't be at the poker table. And then she classified one group as the daddykins, the ones that want to take you under their wing and they won't bet you and they play soft against you. And you just, of course, then there are the women that, if you got it, flaunt it. They wear their low-cut tops, and if you're a cute young girl, it might work at the table. In the bigger games, I don't think it's going to work much, but without resorting to just use. However, you have to figure out how men perceive you, and then use that to your advantage.
That's true. By the way, Lupe said, is the name of the book How to Beat the Boys?
I believe that's the name, yes.
And what's the author again?
Kat, C-A-T, Hulbert, Hulbert.
Kat Holbert, cool. When did she write the book?
Oh, it's been 7 or 8, 10 years ago. She actually was a professional blackjack player. She was actually nominated for the Blackjack Hall of Fame this year, but she just barely missed getting in, I hear. And then she started playing stud poker, 7-card stud, and anyway, we've stayed good friends for many years, from here to LA and back to here. But yeah.
You know, we're talking about how it can be we can get frustrated in the game when we go on a losing streak or we make a really stupid call. How do you recenter yourself in the middle of the game when you just can't leave? When you can't leave because it's a tournament, let's say.
You just have to learn how to control your emotions. I learned, fortunately, I had some good teachers when I was starting out that taught me, you don't steam, you don't try to, berate other players, tell them great, good hand, way to go, you played it well, or nice hand, if they just really sucked out badly. And you just try to, hold your emotions in. No steam.
Yeah, you were talking about poker being good therapy. Well, I actually do a poker therapy program at the VA hospital in Tampa once a month. I've been doing it for 8 years now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I do. My husband's shrink, when he found out I was a poker coach, he said, I want you to do this for the veterans. And I said, I don't know how to do that in the hospital. And so what I did when I first went, the first time I went, I took a slide deck and I showed him some slides. Well, if you're dealing with people with traumatic brain injury, and polytrauma, they've got limbs missing, they're going to see these slides, they're going to, Z out. And finally I said, forget the slides, dump the slides, deal the cards.
Give me a deck of cards.
That's exactly right. And it's been really heartwarming. This past Tuesday, it's 2-hour drive for me to get to the VA hospital, by the way. It's a 2-hour drive. I do a 90-minute one-table tournament, and effectively is what it is. And I still have Poker Players Alliance hats. I had the last hats that were ever made. And so I have them as a prize, whoever wins.
Oh, well, that's nice.
And what I've done.
They're thrilled.
Oh, they're absolutely thrilled. And it's exciting because what I'm finding is that it becomes terrific therapy because they're able to deal with math skills, able to deal with what they call disinhibition, because when people have a brain injury, it oftentimes damages the part of their brain that's their muffler, that keeps them from making these really snap decisions. And sometimes I think a lot of poker players have had that traumatic brain injury.
They just don't know it yet.
They don't know it yet.
That's funny. Yeah, we actually, when I worked at the Osage Casino in Tulsa, we went out and did a poker party at the VA hospital. And they really seemed to enjoy it. It was great therapy for them. And they were happy. We took gifts and prizes. And yeah, it is heartwarming to see them enjoy something.
I'll tell you what, it has been therapy for me as well, because the comfort that I get from experiencing it when people are having difficulty even speaking clearly, or they might lack a limb, and they're able to sit there and the game theory of getting into the game has been very uplifting for them. So that's really exciting to be able to do that. I mean, I almost cried at the end of it this past Tuesday because it was so cool. I mean, it was so loving. Oh. And I was finally given the recognition award from the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I'm really honored.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Sounds like you definitely deserve it. That's great.
Well, thank you. I love doing it. So what has been the greatest non-financial reward poker has brought to your life?
Oh, well, the people I've met, definitely along the way. You know, from boyfriends to just lifelong friends. You know, and I'm coincidentally still friends with all my ex-boyfriends and their wives or girlfriends. You know, life's too short to be angry or mad at somebody. My mom, of course, was divorced 3 times herself, and she's like, "Well, if you hate them enough to split up with them, what do you?" I said, "Mom, it doesn't mean I hate them. It just means, you know, it was time to move on, but that doesn't mean I have to hate them." So yeah, definitely the people.
Cool. And what was your greatest non-financial poker challenge?
Non-poker challenge.
Non-financial poker challenge.
Oh, I'm not quite sure. I have to think about
And this
that.
may relate to the game directly or kind of on the sidelines. I'm thinking, I guess some of the things that came to mind when I was thinking about what kind of questions I might put together, it had to do with sometimes one of the biggest challenges has to do with lacking support from the home front when going to the poker game. I mean, I have more support than most people I know because it's not a financial challenge, but it's that a lot of family members don't support the people who want to play poker.
Well, I actually lied to my parents when I quit my legal secretary job. Of course, I didn't want to tell them I was playing poker, and they knew the attorney that I had worked for. So I told them I was working for an insurance company. And but you know, after they you know, realized that I was making a living doing it, then they'd come visit me in Vegas, and they thought it was great. So, and pretty much all the guys I ever dated were involved in poker. I think it would be hard, not so much now because I haven't really played in a while, but back then it would be tough. I've got some friends that I grew up with. I don't think they would even come close to understanding my lifestyle. I mean, I'm up till 4 or 5 in the morning, even still, and I'm not even playing, but I mean, I'm just a night owl. So, yeah, it's hard. I mean, that question comes up quite a bit. Guys will say, "How do I, you know, get my wife to enjoy it?" Or, "She hates me gambling." Well, try to maybe get her involved in it, or maybe come to the conclusion you go have your boys' night out and let her have her girls' night out. And, you know, but I think it would be tough if you didn't play yourself.
So what do you think we can do to help bring more women into the game?
Well, I know Matt Savage was making a big push about this at the Women's Hall of Fame luncheon. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, Lupe and Maria. And he said, you know, they've just got to crack down on men being jerks to women, and women being jerks on occasion, but mostly, you know, men will make off-color remarks or comments or just being abusive sometimes. Now, as a whole, I don't think men, you know, there's a lot of great guys out there, and in general they are great, but the few that aren't can certainly ruin it and make women not want to come back.
What do you think the best way to teach women how to play the game?
Well, funny again, my friend Kat actually had classes. Her esthetician was so fascinated by her poker playing, so her esthetician got a bunch of her clients together, and Kat actually would have poker classes, and I actually helped her do it. Sometimes she'd have 20 or 30 women there, and it's hard for one person, you know, you kind of have to divide up into tables. So I would help her do that. First, then people go, "Well, how do I play?" I said, first of all, learn what beats what. You can't do anything unless you know what beats what. That's your starting. And then after that, just very basic, learn the strategies, learn what cards to play, start off playing tight is my recommendation to them, and go from there.
It's good counsel. That's good counsel. And I know when I'm dealing with the traumatic brain injury veterans, and I've got 3 or 4, and it's with recreational therapists, by the way, that's how they bring it in. And that made 3 or 4, and the hands have to be really, really slow. And it's, I've had to figure out how to take people of all range of skills, because before I start, I say, how much have you played poker? Do you know how to play poker? And this past Tuesday, there were 3 veterans there, and I literally had 3 different decades of age range.
Wow.
And and I asked the young one, had he played poker, knew nothing about the game. Actually, the middle one, he said he had played poker a lot with his family. And I said, well, what's your biggest strength? And he said, I don't have many of those. And I asked him what his biggest weakness was, and he said, well,
I like to play a hand.
Going all in all the time. And he said, before I have the hand, just going all in. And he said, I really need to do something about that. And then I asked the younger one what his skill level was. He said he knew nothing about poker. I said, have you ever watched it on TV? And he said, no. And I said, well, let me tell you this, is that this is a good thing to start out with a blank slate, then have bad habits to break.
Exactly.
So I think if anyone's listening to this and they know nothing about the game, I want to encourage them that it's a great place to start. Because if you know nothing about the game, that's okay. You have a blank slate. It's like having a new canvas.
Right. You have no bad habits, as you said. First time I played, I had the ranks of hands written on my hand so I could look down and check and see what. I was terrified. It was a $20 buy-in. I was the legal secretary. I made $90 a week.
Wow.
Yeah. But, I had a roommate and I had no bills. So, other than my rent. So those were the days.
So how long did you keep the what beat what written on your hand?
Well, the first few times I played, until I finally got it embedded in my brain. But yeah, that's the first, when my friend would have classes, she'd say, okay, what do I need to, I said, tell everybody to learn, they've got a week advance notice, tell them to learn what hands beat what, because we can't do anything if they don't know that. There's not even anywhere to start.
Well, when I was a real estate broker in 1996, and we were working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the Seminoles put in Florida, the Seminoles put poker tables in their bingo halls, and they said, we'll start with poker. And when I noticed on your bio the 25-cent ante, it was 25, 50-cent limit poker. And
wow.
the pot froze when the pot got to $10 after the house had pulled off their $2.50.
That's funny.
Oh yeah. And when we would drive from our town in Bonita Springs, Florida, out to out into the Everglades, to the bingo hall, I would, along the way, my husband was so patient, I would go, high card, 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 of a kind. And I kept going over and over and over. He never chided me. He was so patient to hear the same things over and over and over again.
You've got to keep her.
I do.
And that's fun. My best friend Natalie lives in Naples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was born and raised there.
Really?
I've been to the dog track in Bonita Springs.
Bonita Springs, the Naples Fort Myers dog track. And when
Hmm.
I opened my real estate office in 1983, there was no interstate. Interstate 75 wasn't in yet.
Wow.
And there was still a gravel road from Fort Myers to Bonita Springs, which was US 41.
Wow.
So that tells you how far I go back with that. Uh, and
Yeah.
I, and I said that what we needed to do was to call Bonita Springs the heart of the Naples Fort Myers Metroplex, which is what it is today.
Yeah. That whole area is so pretty.
It is. So tell me, how do you prepare for your poker game?
Be rested first of all,
Hmm.
and have a good mindset. You know, there, and I'm sure everybody's done it, where you go in and you know you want to go play, but you really don't feel like going to play. Don't go play.
You're absolutely correct. I have actually, I finally started listening to my inner wisdom.
Hmm.
Literally, there have been times when I was going to drive across the state. It's about 2 hours from where I live over to Daytona, to the really great room over there. And a number of times I've started and I just had this feeling I just did not feel like I was feeling well enough to play, and I turned around. So
Good. Oh, I think that's the biggest thing. Or if you know you have somewhere you have to go and you're limited to time, um, it's hard to play when you have a deadline. When you know you've only got 3 hours to play. Um, I mean, I'm a firm believer in staying a long time when you're winning and getting up when you're losing.
that's it. Get your butt up when you're losing. That's it. And if we put ourselves on a time frame in relationship that we only have so much time to play, I think the poker room is someplace you want to stay away from.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes that's all you can do, but um, just know you're going in not in the best of uh, situations.
Well, now to take that just a step further and say there is a way to use that, because I when they first put the poker tables in the dog track in Bonita Springs, the Naples for my dog track. That was when it was 25 cent, 50 cent poker.
Hmm.
And I would say, okay, I'll take 2 hours and $20. And I was very new to the game, very early, and I had my skill sets were sparse. They were really thin. And I said my objective was to practice folding, because I knew, if you get to a $10 pot, well, I'm not going to fold. Who's going to fold at that? But I wanted to be sure that I folded early and folded often. My objective is to go in with $20 to buy into the cash game. My intention was to cash out with 20 at the end of that time, so I could just practice folding. That was it. And it was really good for my game. So that's the only
That,
time frame that I could think to use.
well, sounds like you have your money management down. I'm not sure about the practice folding part, but if it worked for you and it was good, you got some experience in there, so that's good.
Oh, I mean, isn't that the biggest challenge you see people have, is the resistance to folding when they just want to see one more card?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, sometimes aggression will win a lot of times.
Oh, sure. But
You
when
know,
it's a 25, a 50% bet, that's different.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, I never played that small. We did have a 1 to 3 nickel ante. Well, that's what I played at the Dunes, was nickel ante, 1 to 3 7 card stud, 50 cent bring in. And when I first started playing, it wasn't low card by suit. It was just, if there were 3 deuces on the board, it was the first deuce if you were in the ones. So one of those, old poker pro. Of course, here I am going to the Dunes at 18, and a lot of those older pros. Doyle was 38. when I met him. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. But they'd come and give me little tips. And the one guy said, you sit in the 8 seat every single time. If you can't get it, if it's not open, you take it first time it comes open, because then every time somebody gets a deuce and you get a deuce, you put that 50 cents in your pocket because you were smarter than they were.
What a great tip. I want to remind everybody, please, put some questions in the chat. If you got something that we've brought out that you think is interesting, just shout it out and let us know what you'd like to hear more about, because I want to keep the conversation going. What tips or tricks can you offer for a post-play routine? What might help your game by what you do after your game?
Oh, well, I think, if you play well and you do good, you win, I mean, it doesn't hurt to treat yourself a little bit once in a while. Go get a nice massage, go have a nice dinner. I mean, you can't take it with you, but don't go crazy. I had a boyfriend at one time that was his biggest leak. He spent his hourly shopping rate was more than his hourly poker rate. so but once in a while it's nice to splurge.
Sure, I think that's really cool. When I was in real estate, every time I'd have a closing, I would buy myself something. It was always relatively small, but I think tithe unto yourself. I think it is really important to give back to yourself, and I think it's probably really good for your game too. Because I think sometimes when I've seen people win, win, or they might win in a smaller tournament, and then without savoring the win, it seems like that they just jump into another game. And I think for me and people that I've worked with in coaching, one of the things that I recommend on I call it after action review, is that you want to look at what you've done and what you've done correctly. You also want to look at what you might have done differently. And I don't want to say right and wrong, because that's being judgmental to yourself. And then what you might do differently. And I think that's really important in your after action plan, is that you need to look back at that. And when you've done something really great, I think you need to savor that. I think you need to remember what it is and to really feel it. What was the temperature? What did I have wearing? What did it smell like? What did it feel like? And I think that helps to imprint that on your brain, and then helps you to bring it back up.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm with, as you know, Real Grinders, which is a Facebook, also a website, but mostly a Facebook group started by Raymond Davis to get more publicity for the average Joe player instead of all the big shots. You hear about the Ivies and the Negreanus and, but nobody ever talks about the average Joe. So he started this group, and an interesting thing came up. I guess Daniel Negreanu was actually talking about people should enjoy, everybody's so stoic anymore. They win and it's blasé, let people enjoy it. Let people celebrate a little and savor the moment. And they should. Who was the guy last year? Hesp that made the final table. He was so
with the coat that was
from England. Yes, he was so
John Hesp, I think.
I think so. Yes. I mean, back in the day, there were so many colorful characters. I mean, Puggy Pearson, and I mean, you couldn't trust him for a minute, but he was sure fun to be around. He could be a total jerk, but he was definitely colorful for sure. And another thing I think, and I found myself guilty of this for a long time, I was so wrapped up in poker, I didn't do much else. And health is very important, no matter what. Money can't buy your health. And everybody needs to take care of themselves and stop and smell the roses, go enjoy, go go out to, well, Bonnie Springs is now closed, but go out to the mountains, go out to Red Rock, go to Mount Charleston, to the mountains. You don't have to ski, just go up there and sit at the lodge, you know, and have a hot chocolate or a drink around the fireplace, and you know, just take time to enjoy yourself. Don't just be so wrapped up in poker that you don't have a life.
You're absolutely correct. I think that's one of the biggest problems that people create for themselves, is that they get involved in the game, and this almost addicted to the action. And that's great. You want to get into that, but I think the self-care is critical. And as a caregiver of my mother and my husband, 4 dogs, and you know, I ignored self-care a lot, and I think that's when my heart started misfiring. You know, I realized that
many times go first. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I really want people to understand that in the poker industry, in anything you do, it is the self-care. And please, please take care of yourself. You know, do something for yourself that you've wanted to do. Give yourself a treat. You know, and you know, my mother, who's 92, says in order to stay above the grass, you got to get your butt up. And I've actually said that to my poker players that I was working with, is that, you know, get up from the table, go take a walk. You know,
Yeah.
even in a tournament, if you're, you know, unless you're at the levels which you're just losing your chips so badly, or, you know, unless you're at the final table, you know, I don't care if it's not break time. If you're having jitters, or if your butt's bothering you, or if you need to go take a potty break, get up and go do it. Please do it before the break, because especially if it's at the World Series of Poker, and there's they've pulled one of the women's restrooms and turned it into a man's room. Oh man, I had a hissy fit 2 years ago when I was out there and that happened.
Oh, that's funny.
So
your mother gardens, right?
Yes, my mother's a farmer. She gardens. Yeah.
That's awesome. Keep
Yeah,
you young.
she's had some issues the past couple of years. This past July, she had 2 falls, 2 concussions, and 2 broken ribs. And it's really odd that she should be in better shape mentally in some instances. It's almost like, okay, that part of her brain wasn't working too well, so let's just, you know, like shift it over. Actually hitting her head was actually able to activate other parts of her brain. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But in some instances, she's more lucid and more able to communicate. And I promise I'm going to do some more videos of her out with her garden.
Yes, that was fun to watch.
So if you were to give some advice to lead with the poker players today, what would your advice be that you want them to do for themselves and their game?
Well, as I said, you know, take care of yourself first and foremost. I mean, I started in the 70s, and drugs, you know, I've lost way too many to drugs and alcohol abuse. And I don't even know what it is they're doing these days, but none of it can be good for you. I'm sorry. Now, I'm not against marijuana for medical, you know, it does a lot of good. The miracle marijuana. Smoking is terrible. I don't know how we ever survived with the cigarettes and cigars and pipes in the poker room, sitting right next to you. It was awful. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten less tolerant. But take care of yourself first and foremost, and enjoy yourself, you know. Somebody said once that Stewie just loved the action so much, Stu Unger, but he forgot at the end of the day, the whole point was to take it home and take care of your family. Not that he didn't, but, you know, it was actually to provide, you know, a stable lifestyle. And, but he loved the action so much, he just had to play.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions that we have on our attendees today? Just go ahead and put them in the chat box. I want to tell you, Terry, this has been an absolute delight.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry I had to cancel the first couple of times, but I appreciate and flattered that y'all wanted me to be on. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And what, is there anything you'd like to ask from me? Anything I can do for you? Anything you need from me?
I need a WPA patch.
I love that. I love that. And are you playing this summer?
I'm going to try to. It's been a while, as I said. It's been a while since I've played, but I'm going to try to get my feet wet here in the next few weeks and hopefully try to play maybe a stud event or two at the World Series.
I want to let you know that poker is a lot like, a lot like riding a bicycle. You are going to be able, you have declared that you're rusty and you've declared your flaws, and I want you to kick those off your shoulder because, darling, you know more about poker than virtually everybody that's here on this call today.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, there was a time, and I might be bluffing a little. I mean, that's going to be my excuse when I get to the hey, don't blame me. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't played in a long time. As I said, if I'm playing Hold'em, they can't figure me out because I don't even know what I'm doing.
Well, you will figure it out. I promise you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you so much for being on with us tonight, and thank everyone else for being here. Jackie Wesley should have WPA patches.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Or Liz might too.
Right. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, thank you all for being here. This is Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker, and we are with Women's Poker Association, uniting women poker players worldwide. Pass it on. Come over to the site, wpa.poker, and join for free. And please tell your friends about the association. Let's figure out how we can build and strengthen the association. Thank you so much. Look forward to you coming next month. Take care. Bye.
Bye.